old for video games?
You have failed.
The same way, I will destroy you. And my friend is truly dead.
Now this is pod racing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Graying Jedi podcast. Here in the Jedi Chambers, we gather Jedi Master Psyllium Maas, Lord Uther, and myself, UrzaMaster. Welcome back, gentlemen. Welcome. Good to see you all. Good to be back in the Jedi Council Chambers as we journey once again to that galaxy far, far away, long, long ago. We endeavor today into the 9th and 10th chapter of Disney Plus's The Mandalorian. Embarking on a second season, I am very excited to talk about these episodes today on our 23rd and 24th recording. Now we are splitting these into 2 episodes, so you all are going to hear about the Marshal first, and our next week episode will be the Passenger. So, gentlemen, let's start with the Marshal, Jedi Master Psyllium Maas. I'd love to hear the backstory on this and Season 2. Why don't you take us away?
Thank you, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster. Thank you, Jedi Master, Lord Uther. And thanks to all of you Graying Jedi and Foundlings here to the Outer Rim. We are on Season 2 of Star Wars The Mandalorian, and we're hitting the ground running. We are talking about an episode that blows away prior constraints, not that there were many placed on the science fiction saga, but this one feels like they just poured epic amounts of time, energy, money, special effects, scale, scope. This is how you start a season off on the right foot. It was Chapter 9, The Marshal. And it premiered during the dark times when we were all stuck at home and couldn't go to work and needed something to watch on the TV. October 30th, 2020, the day before Halloween, when none of us could go trick-or-treating. And during 2019, the year prior, during the Mandalorian's first season, writer, producer, showrunner Jon Favreau, he wrote 6 out of the 8 episodes and was obviously very hands-on with getting the show launched. But he also had to split time working on the Disney big screen adaptation of The Lion King. So as a result, although he was on set and working with actors and everybody and behind the scenes, he didn't get to sit in the director's chair and actually shape and mold the action himself. Well, we checked that off the bucket list with Chapter 9, The Marshal. Jon Favreau is our director and our writer. And like I said, from a man who has given us Zathura and Iron Man 2 and so forth, and Chef, wonderful little indie film that he did with Scarlett Johansson and Robert Downey Jr. Jon Favreau has become a big name director, and he puts all of that polish here for the small screen, and you can just tell when you're watching that this is something big, this is something bold. We also have big names, just like we had in Season 1, gracing us by joining the Star Wars universe. We have John Leguizamo voicing galactic gangster Gor Koresh in the tease. We have Amy Sedaris returning as Peli Motto. We have Timothy Oliphant as Cobb Vanth. Now, Cobb Vanth was actually created in the Star Wars canon novels. He first appeared in the book Aftermath, which was directly after the Return of the Jedi events. And there were 3 books in what has been known as the Aftermath trilogy. And Cobb Vanth appears in all 3. It's a tapestry of what's going on in the New Republic as the New Republic is formed. So he's one of several storylines in this trilogy created by author Chuck Wendig. And curiously enough, if you think to yourself that everybody's behind the scenes and they're all perfectly integrated and in synergy, Mr. Wendig did not realize they were going to be taking his creation and putting it into live action until he started getting DMs from people saying, "Hey, are you watching this?" And sure enough, when he turned it on, he realized that they had taken his creation from the keyboards and brought it to full-blooded life for this episode. And Timothy Oliphant doing a variation of his classic justified persona, a smooth-talking lawman, quick on the draw and easy on the eyes. He's Diet Raylan Givens and so forth. We're all here for it. And we have a surprise guest at the end, but we're going to hold him until the end, because I'm sure that's going to come up in the council's deliberations and so forth. But another face from the big screen graces us there in the last moments. So, gentlemen of the council, Jedi Masters one and all, we can go a variety of different ways on this. I'm just going to throw out a couple of my brief observations, and then we'll just fuel the discussion and see where it takes us there. I really want to point out the glinty red eyes in the tease. As a frequent Disneyland visitor, I'd make sure that I always ride the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, so I can see an animatronic Johnny Depp and go down the flume. But as you're leaving that ride and you're looking from side to side as you're coming back up to reality, there are lots of little glowy green eyes blinking at you, looking, and you say to yourself, what's that hiding in the shadows? Are they rats? Are they bats? There's something there, and it's just sinister enough to give you the willies, but it's not so terrifying that you'll have to leave the closet light on when you go to bed. And this was one of Favreau's first instances in this episode where I felt not only is he got the right tone for this sequence, you know, set on a rundown planet, not unlike Navarro, at night, but there are these creepy Disney-like creatures that are, you know, menacing and toothy and all of that, but we never see anything except their eyes. And I just, as soon as I saw it the first time, it reminded me of the Pirates of the Caribbean, which in turn belongs to the Disney parent company. And it just felt exactly in place. It felt like exactly something George Lucas might have done if he had been behind the camera. So it's a little tiny moment. And I mean, the episode goes on to bigger, brighter, and better things. But I just love the little red eyes. They actually, Lucasfilm used them in Willow when they rebooted their Ron Howard fantasy series. They had a similar effect. So if you give me little red glowy or green or blue glowy eyes, I'm right there, and you're getting a thumbs up from this critic. I love seeing Gamorreans in a boxing cage fight to the death. The Gamorreans. I always feel sorry for those green pig creatures, and they're always getting eaten by rancors or sacrificed in some fashion, but it was nice to see them doing a little there. We had a return of whistling birds that the armorer had armed Din Djarin with. We got a new city on Tatooine, Mos Pelgo, not to be confused with Mos Eisley or Mos Espa. I mean, gentlemen, I think the biggest note story-wise was the humanization of the Tusken Raiders, something that they briefly touched on in Chapter 5, the gunfighter before. But this was really a case of trying to turn what had once been perceived as an enemy or a one-dimensional, you know, villain or those jerks that killed Shmi Skywalker, and try to give them a little bit more of a rebranding, a rebranding, if you will, as to this indigenous tribe exposed to the harsh conditions of Tatooine, and just trying to make it through without being harassed by settlers and the greedy mining consortiums and so on and so forth. So I know we probably brought that up in our Chapter 5 discussion, which, Graying Jedi fans, you can go ahead and check the archives and see how we did. But I really enjoyed that. That's a direction that they were going with. They'll continue with that. And then the Krayt Dragon. I mean, not only was the effects work in this a far cry from what we might have gotten in, say, late 60s science fiction television, but you will remember that Ben Kenobi, in rescuing Luke in Episode 4, used the call of the Krayt Dragon to scare off the Tusken Raiders who were vandalizing and pillaging his land speeder. So again, another great deep cut Star Wars reference for diehard graying Jedi who would recognize it and so forth. I gotta say, let Jedi Master UrzaMaster tell us just how much he enjoyed the prototypical episode of a Western, of a show that has billed itself as a samurai Western mashup in the New Republic.
Beautifully done. And Timothy Oliphant, or Oilifant, depending on how you're viewing him, brilliant choice to marshal in this new season. I was really impressed, first of all, with the fact that like he played this super West, you know, sort of protector of a village, but very self-aware. You know, not like, hey, I'm in charge and the people respect me. More like, hey, I'm sort of in charge and I'm also realizing that the people are only going to listen to me to a point. So you're going to have to kind of take things as they are. And open-minded, but very much, you know, kind of set in his ways. I think that a giant sand dragon is just freaking cool. As a Star Wars fan, it was amazing to see. The effects were great. It definitely felt true to Lucas's original trilogy. It seemed like something they would have done had this been possible to do in the time. Not like just inserting a bunch of weird-looking creatures in existing sequences where it made no sense. This really felt like, you know, if I was on Tatooine back in the day, I might have had a sequence with the sand dragon terrorizing sand people, just so that later when Obi-Wan scares him off, you know, you kind of understand what noise he's making and why that's influential. I love the idea of having to put the two forces together. That felt very, I don't know what the common parlance is, I guess woke, but at the same time it was in such a great way that it was like, this is cool. This really is like the, I guess the cowboys working together with the, well, I'll use the phrase of the era, Indians that you might have seen in old westerns, like black and white westerns, where, you know, they had to unite against some bandits who were terrorizing both of them. And, you know, probably the native girl falls in love with, you know, the hero, that kind of a Western. This had all that without having to weave in some goofy love story. But it did include, like, some real selfless heroism, you know? I mean, you got the Mandalorian getting eaten by a dragon, not knowing, like, you're going to have to protect the child. Like, oh, man, like, what? I know, like, the first time I saw it, I'm like, wow, like, is this going to be, are they taking this show in a totally new direction? Like, it was exciting. It delivered the drama. It really just, you know, this again, like in the first season, you know, I went into it skeptical, like, yeah, I watched the prequels and I watched a couple of these sequel movies and they're not so great. And I was just blown away. I mean, this, you know, for a season 2 opener, brought me back to Star Wars. I felt like a little kid watching this. It had that level of excitement and intrigue and just like, I think of it on a manly level too. It was just sort of macho and badass, you know, and just like that. To be honest, Hollywood doesn't tell a lot of those stories lately because it's a tired trope. This was pretty damn cool. And I love the idea of the villagers burying bombs to blow up a giant sandworm. And then it's sort of working, but not really. And like stuff going wrong. And how are they going to get out of this? and like the bile vomit that like burns you alive. Oh, it was just cool, man. Like if this was, you know, the 80s, there'd absolutely be plastic toys with questionable paint, and you would definitely have this playset of like sandbox sandworm with your little Tusken Raiders and your Mandalorian and your little child, and you'd be in that sandbox playing with this thing like, all right, we got to blow up the crate worm, and it's like, oh. When I tell you this made me feel like a kid again, I was like, where was this toy when I was 8? This would have been awesome. I mean, we had Boba Fett, we had Slave One, we had A-Wings and AT-AT Walkers, and I didn't have them because I was poor, but like my friends had them. And we had all these cool Star Wars toys, but it's like, man, this was the toy that would have been dope to have. Where's the Lego set, Disney? Where's the Lego set of the Crate Worm and the Mandalorian and Timothy Olyphant?
I'm looking up right now to see. It looks like there might be a crate dragon.
You know what? If y'all out there listening and watching
no, there's not.
out on the YouTubes, if you know of a toy set with this crate dragon or something similar, maybe fan made, drop us a link in those comments because I'm a supporter of local arts and so small time like crafters. I would love something like that, and that would be really cool. And or if you work for Lego, what the H, man, drop us a link and tell us that this is the next Star Wars set coming out. We don't need another Millennium Falcon. We need a crate worm.
Hey, I really like this episode of Star Wars Meets Dune as a Dungeons and Dragons side quest, because that's completely what this was. It was a way to kind of set up something, you know, obviously for season 1, and it's a way to get that other armor back into the fold, obviously, which, to that point, how weak does Boba Fett's armor look against Mando's? Like, when he walks in with the Boba Fett armor, he's so slight of, like, shoulder and everything, he just did not look tough in that. And then I'm trying to think back to Return of the Jedi. I'm like, in Empire Strikes Back, and did he look really that tough to begin with? You know, just trying to... But back then, he was so cool. Like, Boba Fett was so cool. He was so mysterious, couldn't figure it out. And then we see this guy, and it just, compared to that upgraded armor that Mando has, can't hold a candle to him, in a sense. But, oh, sorry. That's my phone going off. Yeah, great episode, action-packed. I thought it was a little weak that those miners run out of town after he just shoots like 2 of them, and then they all try and get away. Like, they all leave. That's a little weak. But I did like... Then he blows them up, obviously, with the missile. Again, the purpose of this, to me, in my opinion, there's one purpose for this episode. Sorry, my kid is texting me. There's one purpose of this episode, and that's to get Boba Fett back into the mix. To me, that's what this is all about, in my opinion. It was kind of nice not to see the child super involved either. I kind of like when that happens, where it doesn't completely focus on him, and we just get a little more of that action. But yeah, for me, very solid episode, for sure.
Yes, we glimpse Tamura Morrison, whom we are, again, the show, when it first aired, we have the ability here at the Jedi Council to pierce the veil of the Force and look back in hindsight. But at the time, we asked ourselves, who is that mysterious scarred man? Is it Boba Fett? Is it somehow another Jango Fett from Camino? Like, there was all sorts of questions and theories. We knew who it was, the actor, but we were still a little unsure of what we were getting in the story. And don't worry, Graying Jedi fans, all will be revealed as it went forward. I loved the reference to the second Death Star's explosion and getting a visual. I mean, grounding us firmly in the timeline that we've come to understand. I love seeing a giant sandcrawler again. Now, Cobb Vanth, the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, the way there is a little bit of a I won't say contradiction, but there is a little bit of discrepancy between how he comes across the armor recovered by the Jawas in the book form telling versus how it was here. And I just chalk that up to just merely trying to streamline it and just make it as simple as possible for, the 9/10 of the audience that didn't sit down and read Chuck Wendig's very fine Star Wars trilogy. But in essence, it's the same. He's rescued by Jawas, and he ends up giving them or getting from them the remnants of Boba's armor recovered outside the Sarlacc pit. And I think, to Jedi Master Lord Uther's point, I think the shoulders is one thing. It's also that he seems to have a long neck, or at least his shoulders and his neck and his hair and all that. So there's a little gap going on there. Like, I could even see the back of his skin in one shot, from behind. Like, it's a little ill-fitting, I suppose. It'll probably look better on its original intended owner, if you know what I mean. But yes,
I do.
You have your Iron Man callback, shooting the missile to get rid of the Mining Guild baddies, and I'm a pet owner, as I think we all are, or have been, and I just felt bad for the banthas. Like, we got a great shot at the Tusken Raider camp. They were literally flossing and brushing the bantha's teeth, which has nothing to do with the underlying story, but was just a nice moment. Like, oh yeah, these guys, they could use proper oral hygiene too. And then what happens in the episode, one right after the other, these poor banthas end up getting swallowed, digested, ambushed, except for there's one in the middle, which is kind of a great little joke, where they call to it to sacrifice the bantha, and the bantha, the Krayt dragon, ignores the bantha and swallows the guy running for his life, the Tusken Raider running for his life, and the bantha's just like, okay, I'm fine with that. But I did feel bad. I was like, no banthas were harmed during the making of this, but my heart was kind of like, oh no, they're just, they've come a long way since being an elephant that they just threw a bunch of stuff over to disguise in New Hope. So I don't know, guys. Banthas or dewbacks? Which would you rather ride in the harsh dune sea?
Do you think that they... So here's my Tusken Raider question. Is it important that they are bad guys in a sense, or do you think there's just different, like there's good Tusken Raiders and there's bad Tusken Raiders? I mean, what's the purpose of rebranding them? I mean, obviously we see it in Book of Boba Fett, but I don't have an issue with it completely. I'm just trying to figure out why.
I think they're an interesting character. I think, when we meet them in New Hope, they're just sort of dangerous because they happen to be there. And we never really revisit that too much until, you get to the prequels, and then they're really just kind of rabble-rousers, and then, they end up being the quote-unquote torturers and murderers of Shmi Skywalker. But then they just sort of get slaughtered by Anakin Skywalker, and it's like, well, wait a minute, they were there, there were women and children, you find out, like, in this episode, yeah, they are raiders, but they live in the Dune Sea. Like, this is a super harsh area. It's an interesting and recent Star Wars has done a really nice job of looking at, like, native peoples in their lands. Like, we talked about with Andor and his sister, the planet they came from. Like, there was just a bunch of kids out in the wilderness, and then, like, the modern era and modern world was sort of thrust upon them, and they were wiped out by the Empire. And Andor was saved, even though he was also sort of kidnapped. But it fleshes out, like, an interesting people that you really don't get a whole lot, until this moment, you don't get a whole lot about. So it's kind of like, well, are they just these one-dimensional sort of, like, dangerous rabble-rousers that, live in yurts and are nomadic, or is there some depth to them? And I think the moment with the Banthas, it's like, like any nomadic people, like, they have a culture, they have a history, they have a purpose in life. They can be reasoned with. Some of them are quite peaceful, but they have to do what they have to do to survive. It's Tatooine, it's a desert world, like, kind of makes sense. I mean, if nothing else, really the purpose is just to make them more interesting. And if you want to bring original canon into it and make it interesting without like totally inventing something out of the blue, like, I don't know, a yak that makes green milk, you know, this is actually kind of interesting. Like, this is like, okay, cool. Like, we met them, we've seen them a couple of times, but now we're actually like figuring out like they are the way they are because of where they live, and they've been there for thousands of years, many, many generations. They've adapted, and we're really just like seeing people trespass on their lands, like the Hutts, the Empire, you know, the human peoples that now populate sparse pockets of Tatooine. Like, that's, to me, that's kind of interesting. You know, it's a way of using what's there to rope us into a familiar place, but give us a story that's still pretty compelling. Even though it's like a super tertiary character, it's fan service, but it's an unusual fan service. Like, you know, this isn't introducing us to Mark Skywalker. Like, hey, I'm the great uncle of Luke. You didn't meet me because I'm not really real and I've been living in Jersey. You know, just like, you know, it's just, you know, it's not hokey and it's not contrived. It's just like, hey, this is just something that not only seems plausible, but it's interesting and it makes you think.
I want to expound briefly on my fellow Jedi Master, UrzaMaster's comments there. I think it actually deepens the Mandalorian and Din Djarin's character. Because if you look at how everyone else on Tatooine reacts to the Tusken Raiders, they're always a threat, they're fearful, they hate them, you know, they want to destroy them, etc. And you have this uneasy conflict. And he's the only character now we've seen in across 2 seasons who speaks their language. He's not a shoot first, don't bother with questions. Like, he draws in Cobb Vanth and the other villagers to, you know, basically grudgingly accept and embrace and work with them. So I think this idea of rebranding the Raiders it does everything that Jedi Master UrzaMaster says, and it does it very well. But it also makes the Mandalorian seem like that richer, deeper individual who looks beyond the chasm, who looks beyond the first look of, you know, these people, and took the time and the trouble on his own accord to be able to communicate with them and understand them and speak their language and their customs. You know, he's familiar with their customs when they're passing things around the campfire to drink and so forth. So I think it deepens the characters of the Tusken Raiders, but it also deepens Din Djarin significantly and makes you look like this guy's, you know, he's the real deal. So.
Oh, my hope is I don't know where they were going with the character, but I hope he becomes part of, you know, we keep talking about, I can't help myself, but I keep going to this idea of having 3 Thrawn movies and getting this huge, like, getting the gang together, and I would love this guy to be a part of it. I just feel like it's a natural fit, and yeah. So I'm just that's all I wanted to say about that.
Well, you know, the Disney execs watch The Graying Jedi.
They do.
And I'm
That's
sure
right.
the thing they've all been waiting for is, what lightsaber do we bestow upon this season 2 opener of The Mandalorian? I agree with Jedi Master Psyllium Maas here that what we get isn't just an interesting revisit of Tatooine or just a fun little adventure that helps us usher in Boba Fett. It does deepen the lore quite a bit. There's a lot more to Mando than meets the eye, and I think that's something you almost had to do because the first season gives us quite a bit. I mean, you really feel like you know Din Djarin by the end of the first season, and it's like, where are they going to kind of go from here? And a lot of these like mini-series they run on streaming services, you only really get 1 season, or maybe 2, because there's not a whole lot else to say because you're filming 8 movies, basically. They might be shorter than a full-length feature, but you can pack a lot in 1 episode. We see it with Picard, we see it with a lot of shows. So, gentlemen, if you'll entertain me for a moment, I'd like to offer my lightsaber for this first episode of Season 2. And per usual, I have no visual aid in this respect. I thought I had something like, ooh, I'm going to go first. No, that's not the case. I've completely spaced to grab something ahead of the show. I lied. Gentlemen, I truly enjoyed this revisit of Tatooine, this ushering in of Boba Fett, this deepening of the Tusken Raiders, but overall, this incredible journey into who Mando really is. So I give this episode a 1995 Brett Favre starting lineup action figure,
Nice.
NIB, green background,
Nice.
lightsaber.
Nice. Very good.
This was a total win for me. I loved it from top to bottom.
Oh, I'll go. I don't think I've used this one yet. I'm pretty sure. I don't think I've gone Xbox green, FIFA green. I don't think I have.
Nice.
I don't think I have. So I will go. It's a little bit lighter green. I did enjoy this episode. Like I said, I felt like it was a little side questy. I'm okay with that. You did convince me though that this did help make Mando a deeper character. So I think that's a really good point. And now I would like to know that backstory as to how he made this connection with the Tusken Raiders. So I would be open to that at some point because I know there really hasn't been any information on that yet. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Psyllium Maas, what do we got there? Don't hurt yourself.
Huh?
Don't hurt.
That's really all I need to say, right, gentlemen? This episode wrapped itself around me, took me by the throat with suspense. This is a shimmering Kelly green in honor of a Jedi I knew long before the Dark Times, before the Empire. So absolutely on pace for another fantastic voyage in from the mid rim all the way out to the no space. So yes.
Wonderful. Yes, wonderful, wonderful way to kick off season 2. Kudos to the entire Mandalorian crew. Looking forward to chatting the rest of season 2, which the best way to stay up to date on all of our reviews of these episodes is to click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. Make sure to hit the notification button to stay up to date as soon as these episodes drop. And we are cruising right along to 1,000 subscribers, but right now you still have a unique opportunity to be subscriber number 800. So get on there, spread it to all your friends, see who wins that lucky number 800 spot from the Jedi Council. I am UrzaMaster. Joining us, as always, Lord Uther and Jedi Master Psyllium Maas. We say to you, may the Force be with you.
And also with the Niners.